All right guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be diving into the world of pump action rifles. Yes, I said rifles, not shotguns. And we're going to be starting with Remington's very own 760 Gamemaster. So today we're going to be taking a look at the gun that we have here today, along with its shootability and my thoughts and opinions on it. And then we're going to wrap up the video talking about some history, as well as the different grades and variations that it came in if you wanted to get your hands on one. So with that being said, let's dive right on in. So today we've got a 1974 Remington 760 Gamemaster. It's a BDL version, which is the better deluxe model, and it's chambered in 270 Winchester. Now I'm going to go into the grades and variations a little bit later on in the video, but I wanted to point out that this is a BDL model, and I wanted to show you what to look for if you're looking specifically for a BDL model. So number one, you're going to see this step in the back of the receiver. Only the BDL models have that step. On top of that, the fore end and the stock both have this unique basket weave design in them. And again, those are the two features that kind of gives it away as a BDL or better deluxe version. But back to the 760. So this is a really sleek design, especially for a hunting rifle. Overall in length, it comes in at 42 inches. The barrel is 22 inches. The length of pull is 13.5 inches. And the overall weight comes in at 7 pounds. So, you know, with it only being 7 pounds, it is a joy to carry in the field pretty much all day long, and it still feels really solid, really robust in the hands. So it's got a really good feel to it. On top of that, it is a pump action rifle, and it does run on dual action bars, so that adds to the reliability and the stability of the gun right there. It does have a nice locking, reliable bolt system as well. And then on top of that, it is pump action, so you don't have to worry about, you know, a gas operated gun that could break down or have issues in the field. So you're going to get that reliability there too. Now it does also have a dust cover, which I thought was kind of cool for them to put on this gun, especially with it being a hunting rifle. You never know if you're going to drop it or if it's going to see, you know, water or dirt or debris. So by having that dust cover on there, it does add to a little bit of protection, which is nice. Lastly, this model does have the detachable box magazine on it. So this one holds 4 rounds of 270 Winchester, and it's just nice to be able to have that detachable magazine as well. So these are some of the key features of the 760 Gamemaster. Next, let's talk about the shootability. All right, so let's talk about shootability. Now I've had the opportunity to shoot 3 760s in my lifetime, and they're pretty much years apart, but I shot the 270 BDL, I shot 2 ADLs, one 30-06 and one in 308. And basically I was sitting at a bench, I was shooting out to 100 yards, basically just sighting them in and just kind of having some fun with them. And I was just using regular hunting ammunition on all the times that I was shooting these. Now what I can say is all 3 rifles performed at 2 MOA or better. So when we ask ourselves the question, are these accurate rifles? The answer is yes, they totally are. In fact, these rifles can be used for pretty much any hunting expedition here in the United States and take down any game in the United States because they do come in a lot of different calibers. Now one thing that I will mention is that it was a little awkward to shoot when you're sitting down because it does take a little while to get used to that pump action rather than like a semi-automatic gas operated gun or a bolt action gun, but once you get used to it, it's actually a lot of fun. Recoil wise, they do have a little bit more recoil than a gas operated gun. However, they don't have any more recoil than I would say a bolt action gun, so that's that. Another benefit of this gun is that because you're keeping both hands on it at all times, unlike a bolt action gun, they actually make a really good brush gun. So if you're going on a deer drive or if you're walking through the field, walking through the woods, you can keep both hands on this gun at all times. You're in control of cycling it, so you can cycle through those rounds as fast as you can pump it, and it gives you a lot of good control. Also because of that, it is a little bit easier to maintain. Not that you'd really have to maintain one of these in the field because it doesn't really have a lot of those automated working parts like a gas gun would. So those are some of the benefits of this gun and what I like about it if you're going to be going hunting with it. So what is my overall opinion? Well, I'll be honest, I'm a Remington guy. I really do like the 870s, and in terms of rifles, I really like the 760. It pulls up well, it mounts well. It shoulders well. It just fits me really well on its basic design. So I would definitely say for a hunter or a sportsman that is going out to, especially here in Wisconsin, shoot whitetail, this is definitely a great option. Also for collectors though, over the years, Remingtons have become very collectible, and because they made so many different variants and grades and calibers, these have become very collectible over the years as well. So I would definitely say the 760 is a gun that if you're looking for a pump action rifle, this is one to definitely consider. So now that we talked a little bit about the actual shootability and what I like about the rifle, let's move into the history. All right, so let's talk about some history. Now, the Remington 760 was a huge success, but before that came out, they had the Model 141 Gamemaster. And basically that was produced between 1935 to the late 1940s. And going into the 1950s, it was after World War II, and Remington basically said, hey, for our next pump action rifle design, we really want to have something that is more cost effective for us and more cost effective for our customers. We also want something that's more automated and streamlined so we can mass produce these, and also find a way that we can make parts that are interchangeable between different rifles and even shotguns. So there's a lot of things that they wanted to solve in this process going into the 50s. Well, engineer L.R. Crittenden and William Gale Jr. basically came together, and in 1952 they introduced the 760 rifle, which basically answered all those questions. It basically, had the pump action. It had a detachable box magazine that was really nice that the 141 did not have. It also had a more robust, reliable bolt and locking system. And on top of that, if you go back 2 years, they had come out with the Model 870, which was a pump action shotgun. And a lot of the 870 and 760 ergonomics were similar. The stock felt very similar, the receiver looked and felt very similar, the pump action looked and felt really similar, and even the breakdown of these guns and overall ergonomics and design have a lot of similarities. So that was pretty cool going into the 50s, being able to revolutionize these designs and get them out within, 2 or 3 years of each other. In fact, when I talk to a lot of hunters and sportsmen, they say that back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, 90s, and today, the Model 870 and the Model 760 are the two guns that you need to pretty much go on any kind of hunting expedition out there, whether it be what you would use a shotgun for or a rifle for. Those two guns have pretty much everything covered. They come in a lot of different calibers and a lot of different shot sizes. Because they are pump action, you can have both hands on them at all times. They're very reliable, they're easy to maintain, easy to break down and clean. There's a lot of benefits of those two guns. So kind of a cool story there that Remington was able to figure all that out so early in the 1950s. But now back to the 760. So it was produced between 1952 all the way to 1980. And in that time frame, they made a little over 1 million of these guns. Now, even though it was discontinued in 1980, it's really important to note that they quickly in 1981 released the Model 7600, which basically, in my opinion, is the exact same gun, except there's a few things internally that they changed on the actual bolt design. So if you remember from a previous video when we talk about the 740 and the 742, how they changed the lugs on the bolt to make it a little bit more of an improved design with the 7400, they did the same thing with this, going from the 760 to the 7600. Now the 7600 ran all the way from 1981 until 2020. So it had an even longer run. So if you really take a step back and think about this, this design essentially ran from 1952 all the way till 2020. So I would say it's a very reliable design. It's got a really cool history, and hunters and sportsmen everywhere talk about this model. A lot of people still have and use this model. So now that I've really hit the history, let's dive into the different grades and the different variations if you were going to look to get your hands on one of these models. So let's talk about some grades and variations. But before we go too far into that, I want to talk a little bit about a few different ways that you can determine if the gun that you're looking at is one of the very early models from the 50s or one of the later models. So one thing that you can look at right off the bat is the actual forend. Now these are pump action, slide action, whatever you want to call them. And typically that tube that they're riding on was a magazine tube, like for a pump action shotgun, similar to like the 870. So that is a magazine tube that's stationary and does not move when you're moving that forend. Now, the very early models of the 760s, that was how they worked. They were a stationary, they called it a forend bracket, and it was stationary to the gun and it did not move. However, on the later models, starting in the early 60s, they redesigned it and they actually used a smaller forend, and they basically attached this forend bracket to the forend. So when you cycled the action and brought that bolt and opened the bolt, the entire forend bracket would move with that forend. So that is a really easy way to determine if it's an older one or a newer one. And then on top of that, if you look at the dust cover, the older models have a metal dust cover. So it's just kind of like a stainless piece of metal. And the newer ones have a plastic or a polymer dust cover, kind of like this one. So that's another way to kind of determine which one you're looking at. Another really easy way to determine year of manufacture on most Remington guns is to take a look at the left side of the barrel, very close to the receiver, and you're going to see two letters. The first letter signifies the month, and the second letter signifies the year of manufacture. There's a really cool chart online that makes it really easy to just take a look and figure out what year or month and year your Remington was manufactured. But on top of that, now let's go into some grades and variations. So if we go to 1952, when these were first released, they had 4 different grades. They had the A, the B, the D, and the F. The A was standard grade, the B was special grade, the D was peerless grade, and the F was premier grade. Now they all were essentially the same gun, except there were some cosmetic differences on them because, why not, right? So most of those differences lied with the quality of the wood that was used, the checkering that was in the gun, as well as the engraving that might be in the gun, and other small subtle differences. Now in 1954, they came out with the ADL version, and then in 1960, they actually came out with a CDL version, or a C, which is a carbine model. So as I said earlier, these pretty much were all 22-inch barrels. However, in 1960, they did introduce a carbine model, which was an 18.5-inch barrel, which was even nicer for a brush gun, right? If you're walking through brush and woods. So that was 1960 that those came out. Then in 1966, they came out with the BDL as well as the BDL left hand. And also 1966 was the year that Remington celebrated 150 years. So they also had an 150th year anniversary model that basically had different engraving and just kind of celebrated those 150 years of Remington. And then in 1976, they came out with an American Bicentennial model, which basically was celebrating 200 years of America. So those are some of the different grades and different variations that you can find out there. And on top of that, they also had a bunch of different calibers. Like I said before, they really kind of went all out on this rifle, and they wanted to make sure that any kind of hunter for any kind of application, this rifle would suit your needs and exceed your expectations. So now with this, there's a lot to go over. So I'm actually gonna have to refer to my notes. Most of the stuff I can just go off the top of my head, but in this case, I do have to use my notes because there's a lot of different calibers and a lot of different years. So bear with me here as I kind of get through this list. So in 1952, the original 3 calibers were 30-06, 300 Savage, and 35 Remington. Then in 1953, they came out with 270 Winchester, which is this model. And then in 1954, they came out with 257 Roberts. Then in 1957, they came out with the 244 Remington and the 308 Winchester. Then in 1958, they came out with 222 Remington as well as 280 Remington. Then in 1964, they came out with 223 Remington. And then in 1968, they came out with 243 Winchester as well as 6mm Remington. And then the last year of production in 1980, they only offered this rifle in 35 Remington. So I know that was a mouthful, but as you can tell, and as you think about the different calibers that this came in, it really does have a wide range of shooting application, which is really cool that Remington was able to do that. Now, let's talk about collectability just for a second. So although there was 1 million of these made, which sounds like a lot, if you really think about it, there's quite a few different grades and quite a few different calibers. So majority of these that you see out in the wild are going to be an 80L version in 30-06. That's just the most that they made of them. And a lot of them are going to be 80Ls in general. So if you do come across like a BDL with a stepped receiver and the basket weave checkering, or if you do come across like a CDL that has the 18.5-inch barrel, or if you come across, you know, the 150th anniversary or the American Bicentennial model, those are definitely going to be harder to find, especially in high condition, and they're going to go for a much higher price as they're a lot more collectible, scarce, and just overall harder to find. So overall, you know, what are my overall thoughts on the Gamemaster? I'd have to say that overall this gun was a huge success in firearms history as a pump action rifle. We talked about it earlier, going from 1952 all the way till basically 2020 if you include the 7600. And if you haven't had a chance to shoot one of these or hunt with one of these and you have that opportunity, I would definitely say take the time to do that because not only are you probably going to love it, but you're probably going to add at least one, if not three, of these types of rifles to your gun safe, especially if you're a hunter. So definitely check that out. So it was a pleasure to get our hands on this one here today so we could do this video for you guys. You know, with that being said, this is Scott signing off with the Average Joe's Armory. As always, we really appreciate all the support and all the viewers and subscribers. So if you do like this content, we do really appreciate if you take the time to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you can make sure to get notifications on all of our future content. And with that being said, we'll see you in the next one.